For decades, you were dealt one devastating blow after another. Disastrous trade deals, which I'm straightening out, and I'm not saying, hey, there may be a little pain for a little while, but ultimately for my farmers, I love my farmers. They're great patriots. Don't forget, the farmers have been doing lousy for 15 years, okay? Let's face it. If you look at a graph, it's been like this. So when I say I'm negotiating NAFTA, and if they don't make a fair deal, I'm terminating NAFTA and I'll make a great deal. You're going to do much better. Or when we take on China or the European Union, which has tremendous blocks, it's very hard for us to sell stuff into the European Union. It was put there to take advantage of the United States, okay? So when we do, not anymore, you're right, not anymore. We told them that yesterday, actually. I said the same words. Not anymore. Those days are over. But with the European Union last year, you know, it sounds so nice, the European Union. You know why? I mean, they literally did, like I said, they formed to take advantage of the United States. And I don't blame them. You know what? I don't blame them. I don't blame President Xi. I don't blame Prime Minister Abe of Japan. I don't blame the heads of these countries for taking advantage of us. I blame past presidents and past leaders of our country.
Just hours after being sworn in, new U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo traveled to NATO headquarters in Brussels, where he highlighted how much the United States values the transatlantic relationship as a pillar of world security and stability. But that relationship has taken a hit recently, with the U.S. saying it will sanction any firms that do business with Iran. German Chancellor Angela Merkel spoke in Berlin Tuesday on U.S. President Donald Trump's decision last week to pull out of the Iran nuclear deal.
We've now seen a shift in German-American and European-American relations. While Great Britain, France, and Germany were of the opinion that the agreement against Iran's nuclear armament is an agreement that certainly has weaknesses, it is an agreement we should stand by.
Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif met with his European counterparts in Brussels Tuesday to discuss how to keep the Iran nuclear deal alive.
Well, it's up to the European Union and European Union member states to make sure that their interests and our interests are protected and that illegality by the United States is not rewarded.
Secretary Pompeo says the nuclear deal created wealth in Iran that drove its malign activity, and that the U.S. withdrawal was not aimed at Europe. But experts say Europeans are furious at the U.S. for reimposing sanctions and feel their options are limited.
So Europeans felt that they are left with absolutely no choice, but that also this administration has no strategy, no plan B. So basically, Americans are decided for Europeans and for the rest of the world that they want to pull out of this deal and re-establishing sanctions, not only for their companies, but also extraterritorial sanctions, and therefore deciding on the fate of the Iran deal for everybody.
Asked by VOA if he thinks there will be a diplomatic standoff over sanctions on Iran, Trump's national security advisor, John Bolton, said no.
I think inevitably as U.S. sanctions kick in, it'll have an effect on Europe. I think their trade and investment with Iran will drop as well. And I think Iran then faces a very difficult choice.
Bolton added the economic benefits of the Iran deal will soon dry up, and that Iran's economy is already facing difficulties, which led to demonstrations at the end of last year. Tuesday, the State Department announced Pompeo will give his first major foreign policy speech next Monday. The focus, Iran. Cindy Sain, VOA News, the State Department.
The president of the European Commission says that the EU needs to replace the U.S. as a global superpower because President Trump has announced that the U.S. will pull out of the Iran nuclear deal. Jean-Claude Juncker had strong words, but is he right? Let's give it a reality check you won't get anywhere else.
Reality Check with Ben Swan, powered by Dash Digital Cash.
At this point, we have to replace the United States, which as an international actor has lost vigor, and because of it, in the long term, influence. Those are the words of EU Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker during an address to Belgium's Flemish Regional Parliament. It happened in Brussels. Now, he says that Europe should take over as the global leader because the U.S., quote, no longer wants to cooperate with the world as it's abandoning the Iran nuclear deal. So is the EU posturing after President Trump said that the new U.S. sanctions against Iran would impact anyone who deals with Iran, including companies in the EU? Well, one sign indicating the EU posturing is talk of sanctioning the U.S. According to Reuters, EU officials are revamping a blocking statute. It was used by the governing body in the 1990s to threaten then-President Bill Clinton's administration when the U.S. tried to penalize foreign businesses trying to work with Cuba. In that case, it worked. Coupled with the political strategy, Washington backed down. So will it work again? See, basically the statute blocks EU companies from following U.S. sanctions, and it does not recognize court rulings enforcing U.S. penalties for noncompliance. But it's never actually been used, just threatened. And it's seen by EU governments as more of a warning to the U.S. than anything else. So now the idea that Europe should or would replace U.S. as the global leader, well, that's somewhat silly at this point. Through NATO, the United States uses its massive military to protect and to pay for protection for 27 European nations, with the U.S. spending more than double and in some cases triple for defense. But the underlying concern behind Juncker's statements includes some very real questions about the reasons for President Trump's decision to leave the Iran nuclear deal, especially when the IAEA says that Iran is in fact following the agreement. The IAEA Director General released a statement just last week stating this, quote, as requested by the United Nations Security Council and authorized by the IAEA Board of Governors in 2015, the IAEA is verifying and monitoring Iran's implementation of its nuclear-related commitments under the JCPOA. Iran is subject to the world's most robust nuclear verification regime under the JCPOA, which is a significant verification gain. As of today, the IAEA can confirm that the nuclear-related commitments are being implemented by Iran. So what you need to know here is that there are actually multiple storylines here. The EU leadership posturing, that's one, stating the U.S. should no longer be the world leader. That really isn't worth debating at this point because, again, it seems more like a threat than anything else. The IAEA saying that Iran is following the deal, that's something we need to pay attention to. And finally, the biggest, most underreported storyline so far, the fact that Israel is pushing this decision at the same moment that the nation is launching military strikes against Iranian positions in Syria. Again, that is the question here. Is the U.S. going to be dragged into another Middle East war, this time alongside Israel, against Iran and Syria? We take a deeper look at that issue in another reality check, and you can find it right now. It's in the link in the description below.
So when Donald Trump was first elected, we had this conversation on the show, which did quite well on YouTube, by the way, I should mention, about whether in the Trump era, the president of the United States is still the so-called leader of the free world. And leader of the free world, it's not really a literal term, but it's the idea of sort of the most important player from Western democracies geopolitically. And typically it's sort of considered that it's the president of the United States. And at the time we said, it already seems like we're seeing a shift, and it seems like the shift is going in the direction of maybe German Chancellor Angela Merkel being the so-called leader of the free world. Again, it's a sort of amorphous discussion because it's not an official title. But increasingly, we've seen the relationships of the United States with our European allies strained. We've seen trade disagreements with our European allies. We've seen the Paris climate deal fiasco with Donald Trump. We've seen Trump off again, on again, indicting NATO, and we don't know what his latest position is on NATO, but at least at some points he has said that NATO is a very, very bad thing. And then there's sort of general question that now has come up in advance of the North Korea summit and after Donald Trump just saying, hey, we're pulling out of the Iran deal, of whether the United States can even really be trusted to maintain their part of the bargain, their end of the bargain when it comes to deals in general. And we now actually have a statement from German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who says that Europe can no longer count on the United States for military protection, the protection of the U.S. military umbrella, and that Europe will, quote, have to take its destiny into its own hands. And this is related seemingly not only to Donald Trump's actual actions of late, but also to the policy of America first, in whatever way you would interpret that. Now, I want to say something here that is sort of maybe surprising to some, which is that I don't know that this is bad in every sense. And I'm going to try to explain what I mean, right? One interpretation of what Merkel is saying is, Europe can't count on the United States military. It's an indictment of Trump's foreign policy. It's an indictment of diplomacy under Trump in general. And there's this idea, which is, I think, an accurate one, that the U.S. is an increasingly erratic player. Even though our European alliances go back a long time and were considered to be serious and lasting, European allies can't really trust anymore that the United States is going to be there in shared defense of Europe, whatever may come up. That's true. That's a concern, and it's something I've been talking about a lot, which is if the U.S. can't be counted on to stick to deals and stick with allies, our diplomatic power is very much hurt because other countries can't trust us. And in fact, that plays directly into the Russian strategy, which is, hey, let's cause as much chaos as possible in the diplomatic West. Interfering in partnerships between the United States and allies is something that is a huge win for the Russian geopolitical strategic goals. Breaking the Iran deal is part of it. Putting cracks in our relationships with our allies is part of it. And this is why Russia would prefer Trump over Hillary. But I want to mention another side to this, which is that in a sense, isn't it good in a way for the expectation of the U.S. as the world's policeman to go away, right? This is not me being an isolationist, but we shouldn't want the world to expect that the United States will come to the rescue at any time. And I want to be clear. If we have an alliance, if we've made a deal, if we're part of NATO, if we're part of the Iran deal, we should stick to the deal. We should hold up our end of the bargain. I'm not cheering bailing on deals. But from the point of view of resisting the military-industrial complex and resisting the idea that the U.S. will spread democracy through military action and everything that sort of came from the Bush, Wolfowitz, Bolton stuff, we shouldn't want there to be an expectation that the United States will come to the rescue of whoever needs rescuing. And that is an indirect, maybe, effect of what Donald Trump is doing. It's not actually relevant to the European alliances, right? The European alliances I am hugely concerned about, but it's something to keep in mind. But Merkel is right, and it's all laid out in Alexander Dugin's 1997 book, Foundations of Geopolitics. This is yet another one of Russia's stated goals when it comes to sowing geopolitical chaos coming to fruition. The rift that is this sort of growing rift or crack, I don't know what other way to say it, between our Western European allies and the United States plays directly into Russian goals. And to the extent that Donald Trump is responsible for that, it's something that we should all be really concerned with. And of course, you'll have people on the right who say, hey, good, it is America first, and that's it, and yeah, Trump's doing the right thing and being tough, period.
There's a lot there. I just wonder if this is an indictment on our politics, that the two parties are so far apart from each other, because if you have the Democrats who will get us into the Paris Climate Accord and get us into the Iran deal, and then we elect a Republican president, like Trump, or like pretty much any Republican, actually, because they were all against the Iran deal, they were all against the Paris Climate Accord, and we're just going back and forth between those two parties. There's no wonder why Europe and the rest of the world can't count on us.
You can't blame them. You can't blame them. And this is what I said a few days ago, which is if you're North Korea about to negotiate with Trump and you see that Trump bailed on the Iran deal, what makes you think that whatever you negotiate with Trump now for a North Korea deal is actually going to be something that sustains? It's very, very dangerous territory to be going into. And Trump is not getting us into that haphazardly or aimlessly. He's deliberately doing it as if it's some kind of good policy. It's very, very scary stuff.
The transatlantic friendship's getting frosty, with the European Council president now saying Donald Trump is not exactly Europe's best friend right now. He added that Brussels is under no illusion since Trump pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal.
Looking at the latest decisions of President Trump, someone could even think, with friends like that, who needs enemies. But frankly speaking, Europe should be grateful by President Trump He has made us realize that if you need a helping hand, you will find one at the end of your arm.
Well, it's a sentiment being echoed among other European leaders as well. The German Chancellor said Europe now has some big decisions to make. The EU is still on board with the Iran deal and even is risking US sanctions for doing so. Peter Oliver has more on Angela Merkel's remarks.
The civil war in Syria and this fight against Islamic terrorism has escalated from a regional conflict to an international one, which cannot be solved without Russia, Turkey, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Jordan and Europe.
Well, the United States conspicuous by their absence, and what the Chancellor had to say there. It's not known, of course, whether that was a deliberate omission, but it is fair to say that since Donald Trump has taken office, the relationship between Berlin and Washington has been strained. And what we have really seen is the biggest strain put on that relationship was Donald Trump's decision to pull the United States out of the Iran nuclear deal. Angela Merkel touching on that in her speech as well.
According to all the findings of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Iran is abiding by the commitments of this agreement. This agreement was unanimously endorsed by the United Nations Security Council, and therefore we do believe it's not right to cancel this agreement in the current situation.
It's fair to say right now that Berlin is certainly re-evaluating its relationship with Washington as it stands at the moment.
All right, Shalom. All praise, honor, and glory goes to Yahawah, BAHASHAM, Yahawashi, BAHASHAM Rakakwadash. Double honors to my apostles and elders at Greatmillstone, and honors to all you fellow laborers that are enduring afflictions to bring out this word in sincerity and in faith. Yahawah, BAHASHAM, Yahawashi, BAHASHAM Rakakwadash, Barakathum, to all you sincere listeners. Okay, so this is a game changer. All right, as you're seeing on the screen, Europe to ditch U.S. dollar in payments for Iranian oil or Iranian oil. The European Union is planning to switch payments to the euro for its oil purchases from Iran, eliminating U.S. dollar transactions. Brussels has been at odds with Washington over the U.S. withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal, which was reached during the administration of Barack Hussein Obama. I had to throw that Hussein in there like the Apostle to Heart does. President Donald Trump has pledged to reimpose sanctions against the Islamic Republic. And you see right here, U.S. imposes new sanctions on Iran individuals and bank. I'm privy to the information that the EU is going to shift from dollar to euro to pay the crude from Iran, the source told the agency. Earlier this week, EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini said that the foreign ministers of the UK, France, Germany, and Iran had agreed to work out practical solutions in response to Washington's move in the next few weeks. The bloc is reportedly planning to maintain and deepen economic ties with Iran, including in the area of oil and gas supplies. We're not naive and know it will be difficult for all sides. The lifting of international sanctions gave Iran access to the world's markets for the first time in nearly 4 decades. Since then, Tehran has managed to significantly increase its exports of crude. However, oil is pegged to the U.S. dollar on international markets, making it difficult for Iran's partners to make payments for crude and for Tehran to receive them. With the dollar playing the leading role on international financial markets, reimposing sanctions would mean cutting Iran off from the global financial system. Unless they do what? Unless they use a different currency. At the same time, dozens of contracts signed between European businesses and Islamic Republic could be at risk of cancellation if Brussels obeys Washington's sanctions. See? So that's why they're so vehemently opposed to it, man. These other Europeans, because that's going to mess up their money. And then, as we know, Europe doesn't have natural resources like that. So they need that crude oil from where? From Russia and Iran. This would damage Iran's economy, and European firms would lose a huge market in the Middle East. Switching to alternative settlement currencies allows both sides to continue trading despite U.S. sanctions. Hey, so this is clear as day what's about to happen, man. Okay, because Trump said that anybody who even does business with Iran, he's going to put sanctions on them. Which means what? He's going to put sanctions on his own allies. So I'm gonna get some precepts, and hopefully it's edifying. This is Psalms 52:7. Lo, this is the man that made not the Most High his strength, but trusted in the abundance of his riches and strengthened himself in his wickedness. Yeah, that's the so-called white man. Okay? He doesn't make the Most High his strength, even though he says that he believes in the scriptures. Okay, he has you swearing on the Bible. Okay, when you go to the courtroom, okay, he has you swear or affirm. And really you're supposed to be swearing in the eyes of the Heavenly Father, right? That's the origin of it. He doesn't make the Most High strength. He trusts in the abundance of his riches, and he strengthens himself in wickedness. All right, because how did this devil get his riches? This is Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 3. Behold, thou art wiser than Daniel. There is no secret that they can hide from thee. With thy wisdom and with thy understanding thou hast gotten thee riches. Yeah, the wisdom and understanding of what? Of wickedness. Okay, he knew how to trick people into agreements, into IMF funds. Okay, he knew how to militarily take people over, put us on slave ships, have us packed in there like sardines, where we was pissing and defecating on each other. That's how you got your riches. All right, by having our people in gold mines, chopping their noses off and they didn't get the quotas. And now what's happening? Now your riches are drying up, you fucking devils. It has gotten gold and silver into thy treasures. By thy great wisdom and by thy traffic hast thou increased thy riches, and thy heart is lifted up because of thy riches. Yeah, and you devils' hearts have been lifted up. All right, this is the book of Proverbs 11:28. He that trusteth in his riches shall fall, but the righteous shall flourish as a branch. And you're seeing that, man. This devil trusts in his riches. He trusts in his wickedness, in his false understanding. And he's fallen, man. And he's in a precipitous decline. Okay? And this is just another testimonial of that. Proverbs 22:16. He that oppresseth the poor to increaseth his riches, and he that giveth to the rich shall surely come to want. Hey, and these deals, man, these are going to be some backbreakers for Esau, man. Because that's going to decrease his status, the status of the dollar as the U.S. as the world currency. And that's because of what? The petrodollar. All right, because like they said in the article, because the crude transactions are pegged against the dollar, man. And that goes back to the Bretton Woods system of the early 70s, when currencies are pegged against each other and commodities are pegged, are associated with a specific currency. All right. And you're coming to naught, man. This is Ecclesiastes 5:13. There is a sore evil which I have seen under the sun, namely, riches kept for the owners thereof to their hurt. Yeah, and this is to your hurt, man, because you so-called white people, you've trusted in these riches, and you see the riches slipping away. What do you want to do? You want to conquer more areas, man. You want to impose your will on other countries, so then you can set up a puppet leader, get a central bank up in there, but get them on an IMF fund, send contractors in there, and so then you can just keep funneling money into your evil empire. But you know what? These riches have been kept for your hurt, but those riches perish by evil travail. And he begetteth a son, and there is nothing in his hand. That's right, man. That's right. Hey, because you be getting your sons, man. You see that, man. You see that with Esau today. Now, Esau did conquered the whole world, man, put everybody in slavery, but now he broke, man. This is beautiful. Let me read this again. But those riches perish by evil travail, and he begetteth a son, and there is nothing in his hand. Phew, your riches have been perishing, man. And the more and more these nations cooperate with each other, you getting cut out, man. And because America is nothing but a service economy, and America's status as a global power is predicated on the oppression of all these other nations, man. It's predicated on having markets open. Now, when they're not dealing in the dollar, that closes off a market to America, because say America isn't directly involved in that deal. If they're still using the dollar, then America benefits. Okay, that strengthens the dollar. Yet, if they stop using the dollar in these transactions, they cut America out completely, man. They cut America and the dollar out. And that does what? That further weakens the dollar. And then there's nothing being manufactured here. Oh, and then you got another article. Russia, they want to ban potatoes. So that's another because hey, that's one of the main exports, agriculture. And that's based what, 2.5 hours from here, man. Okay, you get avocados and all these different fruits, pecans, walnuts, almonds. That comes from the Central Valley. And then also you got wine, which the Lord destroyed Napa. So the little that you do export, besides guns and economic services, financial services, the little that you do export, guess what, man? Nobody wants it no more. Hey, so those riches that you got are perishing. Let me look up this word travail. Ayan or anayan, generally ado, i.e. generally employment or business or travail. Occupation, task, job. Woo, okay, so let me go back. By business. But those riches perish by evil travail or occupation or job or business. Because you so-called white people, you do bad business, man. You do bad business. That's why nobody wants to deal with you, man. That's heavy. But those riches perish by evil travail. And he begetteth a son, and there is nothing in his hand. Yeah, because these devils are always being exposed for a new Ponzi scheme. All right, for ripping people off. Because the so-called white man don't do good business. That's why nobody wants to